Okay. Sure. Last name is spelled Licata. Licata.
So, Councilman Licata, how did the WTO ministerial end up in Seattle?
Well, that's actually been a subject of some debate recently because as the public and the public officials became aware that it's costing the city up to $3 million, people like myself started asking, exactly how did we end up with this? And like many decisions, the origin goes back a number of years, at least a couple years. But the city actually went through a process, apparently, of bidding for it. And when I say the city, not necessarily the city government. There was a letter sent to WTO, and it was signed by, as I understand it, 3 people. Bill Gates, who everybody knows runs Microsoft, Phil Conduit, who's the head of Boeing, and apparently the mayor. And I think it was the current mayor, Mayor Paul Schell, inviting the WTO to come to Seattle. And I think the context was one that people thought of it would be a slightly larger APEX meeting. APEX met here. And that was, again, ministers, and it involved a trading conference. And I don't think, well, 1/100th of the % of people knew that it occurred in Seattle than that know what's going on now at WTO. So they thought it was going to just be a bigger sort of, I think, a boring trade conference. I would say 95% of the people who had anything to do with WTO bringing it here had no idea that what the past WTO conferences were like as far as protests were concerned, nor how controversial it was going to be.
How do you think they could have been so
naive?
Naive.
You know, we, being the city, had just finished rejecting the Olympics. And I was at the forefront of getting the city to say no thank you to the Olympics, which is a major undertaking, which would cost millions and millions of dollars. And I think people were so relieved that we didn't get the Olympics that when the WTO came along and they thought it was just a boring trade conference, they said, oh, sure, we'll do that. And, you know, that's not a problem. Now, obviously the people on the inside, people who are familiar with WTO, must have been aware that there would be protests coming down the line. But I would say that very few in city government were really aware of it.
When were you first alerted, and the rest of the city council, that this was a reality and that the WTO was coming for certain?
Well, you know, I would say it was probably, we probably got a memo or something maybe 6 months ago, and quite honestly, I was unaware of how controversial it was as well. And I suspect that's true of a lot of people out there who even consider themselves activists. You know, I wasn't a big fan of what's going on regarding NAFTA and a lot of other types of issues, but I was unaware of the amount of political activity centered around the WTO conference. So I would say that up until, I would say, month and a half ago, people were really unaware of what was about to take place.
Are you glad that the WTO is in Seattle?
Well, what I'm glad about is once it's over, I'll be glad it's over, I'll tell you that. You know, I question whether a city like Seattle has a need for doing large events like this. I mean, that was my position regarding the Olympics. We have to assess whether, in fact, the people of Seattle benefit from something like from an event of this size. It does cost a lot of money, and it does drain away a lot of public funds. So do we want public funds?
We truly went from like 10 minutes the first time to 30 seconds the third time. It was pretty.